Introduction to CloudFlare. It is going to be pretty low level, not low level, that's probably a bad term, introductory level stuff. But a little bit about me. My name is Reimann. Looks like Reimann. And when people call me and they say, "May I speak with Reimann?" I say, "He's not available." We have my wife and I have 4 kids from the age of 12 to 21, from Atlanta, Georgia. I've been a web developer since '96, which obviously dates me, coming up on 30 years of development. I've been using WordPress as my full-time platform since 2008. I lead the Atlanta WordPress meetup, been doing that for 10 years. I'm a WordCamp organizer in Atlanta, all that stuff, lots of WordPress stuff. And I run an agency called Clockwork Web Dev, hence the shirt, which I think kind of matches the theme here, which was not intentional whatsoever, but I'll take it. So I have all of these slides available because it's a slew of information that I'm going to. I've got 90 slides, so I'm going to be like flying through here. But what I did is I have the slides here, so if you want to follow along during this, feel free. That's this link. And I also 2 minutes ago released the video of me doing this. So I'm going to leave. No, but I have basically me going through my slides again online because I figure you guys are. It's a lot of information, and it's good to have a recording already so you guys can come back and say, what was that crazy guy saying, and then I have it documented, for you guys. I have this slide coming up again in a second too, just in case someone else comes in. So, all right, I've been doing DNS for a long time. It's something that I really enjoy doing. It's super geeky, but it was. First started learning DNS, and I had an OpenBSD Unix box where I had to actually use bind to do DNS, and I really learned DNS then. It's so much easier now. You don't have to read a 300-page book about stuff that probably doesn't make sense, but it is good to know, if you really want to get into DNS, there's lots of books out there, but what is DNS? DNS is kind of like, and I'm going to date myself again because I don't even think phone books exist anymore, but I think the concept people still can understand. DNS is basically like if you're trying to look me up in the phone book, you go to Reimann, and then you find Aaron, probably at the top of the list in the REI area with the AA in there, and it will pull up the phone number, right? DNS is the same thing. When you try to go to a website, your computer in the background goes and says, hey, name servers, where is this domain? It returns it and it redirects you to it. So it's a pretty simple concept, but there's a bazillion different types of DNS records you can do, and it's gotten, really 20 years ago, DNS was a little more simple. Now they have a lot of different features like SPF and DKIM records and all that stuff, but it's cool. All right. How can a registrar be set up? I'm going to use GoDaddy as an example, as much as I'm not a huge GoDaddy fan for anything really. It's the most popular one, so I actually bought a domain for this talk just so I could have like a fresh, because I don't have anything on GoDaddy anymore. I put everything on Cloudflare. But there, let me just kind of explain this slide. When you have a domain, you can have your registrar there, you can have your DNS there, and your website there. It's not, that's a fine solution, although I wouldn't host a website there, but you can have that and it works for probably thousands and thousands of people. You can have it set up where GoDaddy is your registrar and they have your DNS, but you have the website hosted on, I don't know, WP Engine or Flywheel or something like that. Or you can have it where GoDaddy is only your registrar and your DNS is at Cloudflare, and that's what I'm going to walk you guys through with these screenshots, is moving your DNS from GoDaddy to Cloudflare. I buy all my domains at CloudFlare because it's cheaper. GoDaddy, like, I think a domain is 15, 16 bucks, but if you buy it on CloudFlare, it's $8 or $9. They don't mark up the ICANN fee, the yearly fee for registering a domain. So I'm just a huge CloudFlare fan in that aspect. Why did I start using CloudFlare? So a friend of mine, slash business partner, had this idea of building 48 websites in 48 hours for 48 nonprofits. And the first time we did it, it was a nightmare. Even just trying to figure out how do you spin up 48 sites quickly based on just someone's email address. We wound up building a whole multi-tenancy platform to do it using Ansible. But we learned. I knew it was gonna be a mess. There's no way you can keep track of everyone's username and passwords and make the DNS changes and all that stuff. But I realized, after the first event, we did the event in Atlanta and Boston. The next year we did Atlanta, Boston, London. I mean, it was great being able to go places and do stuff. But what we wound up doing is we used CloudFlare where you can invite people. We had one account at 48 and 48, and we would tell the nonprofits, hey, go do this LMS platform, and we walk you through moving your DNS from GoDaddy or wherever it is to CloudFlare. And that made it so much easier. So at the next event, when we built 48 websites in one weekend, which I still can't believe we did that a lot. It was fun, but it made it a whole lot easier when we could log in to one place and we would just make these records, and it was all pretty much the same. And this is my famous quote, if you can get 48 nonprofits to change DNS providers, you can do anything, because nonprofits are they're not the most technical savvy people, and so the fact that we're able to do that, pretty impressive. But I learned a ton about CloudFlare doing that. Again, here are the slides. If you need it, no one else has joined since, so we're all good. Future self. So how many of you guys use CloudFlare currently?
Just Turnstile. 3,
okay. How many of you guys, how many know you should be using it but are scared to do it?
Or lazy.
Okay, that works. That's fair. And how many of you guys have never touched it and never thought about it? Okay, so we got like one. All right, cool.
Thought about it.
All right, it's free and it's great, but it is kind of it's a little scary if you're not familiar with making DNS changes. You can take your website down, you can take email down and all that stuff. But in this example that I'm about to show you, GoDaddy now allows you to export your records, and CloudFlare now allows you to import your records. So when you're doing this now, it used to be CloudFlare would scan your records and it would get 95% of the records, maybe miss 1 or 2 here and there, but now you can export it and import it, and you're not going to lose any records, which is real handy. So, all right, the domain I bought for this was, it sounds so morbid, Message from Beyond. It's just this idea where I can schedule some text messages that my family will get if I don't respond, every 6 months, they'll get a message. I wanted to see if I could do it using AI. I was able to use ChatGPT. It wrote a plugin. It's amazing. It works. Anyway, that's the domain I bought. This is what it looks like when you buy a domain at GoDaddy. Just the vanilla screenshot there, and these are the records that are in there. If you click on the action button there, you'll see that you can export your zone file, and it'll create this file that, don't worry, you don't have to edit this, you don't have to touch it, but I'm just showing you what a zone file is. And it's just your A records, your name servers, your text records, it's all that. It's just not quite as pretty interface here. But that's what you're exporting is, exporting and importing is called a zone file. In GoDaddy, you go over here to where it says name servers, and you're going to want to switch over to use your own name servers. And then you'll have to drop them in here. So what you'll do is you'll switch over to CloudFlare at this point because you don't know which name servers they're going to assign. So if you go over to CloudFlare, you either, if you're just now creating an account, it's going to take you to this screen, but if you already have other domains, you can click up here and hit add and hit connect to a domain, and that'll take you to right here, where you basically change it to upload your own DNS file, that one you just downloaded from GoDaddy, drop in your domain name, and then hit continue. And this is one thing that I think is really cool, is that it's free, and I have probably about 200, maybe a little bit more than 200 domains in my CloudFlare account, and I only have one client that's paying for the $20 thing. So it's very free, and I used to feel bad, like I'm ripping off the Cloudflare people by not buying their service, but that's not necessarily a true statement. Cloudflare wouldn't be worth anything if we only had 10 people using it. They want as many people using Cloudflare as possible, because the more people that are on their network, the more they understand where the threats are coming from, and they can start blocking things sooner. So I don't feel bad like I'm stealing anything, from them. I'm doing them a favor. That's how I say it. And maybe not so much, but that's how I justify it. Okay, so hope that's okay. But you hit continue here, and you just select the file from your computer, and once you upload it, it's going to find those records. This is one of the most important, I was gonna say tricky, but one of the most important things is you have your A record, which points to your web host, and then your C name, your www records. Those are the two that you wanna keep proxied. The other ones, you actually, GoDaddy always puts a bunch of things in here that you don't actually need, but if you don't recognize them, don't proxy them. Keep these two proxied though. If you turn them off, if you turn them all off, you're not really getting any of the features of Cloudflare, but the two that are most important are your A record and your www record. Make sure that those stay proxied. And what that is gonna do, I always use this website, whatsmydns.net, like I probably go there 3 or 4 times a day, depending on what I'm doing. But what is happening when you switch over from GoDaddy to Cloudflare, this is the original IP address, right here. Obviously that's a made up one, I just put it in there, but that's the original IP address. And what Cloudflare does is it puts, I don't want to say firewall because I'm like a network nerd, and technically it's not a firewall. It's not a physical firewall, but it's as close as you're going to get to a firewall here. And what it's doing is it's proxying. So when my website starts getting a bunch of traffic from Singapore or Russia or whatever, Cloudflare, they don't get my actual server IP address. It hits the Cloudflare servers, and Cloudflare says, this looks like garbage, and it won't allow the traffic through. So that's basically the crux. Like if we're done with my talk, that's like the most important part, is that you understand that you're pretty much getting a free firewall, which is super, super handy. All right, where were we? So, all right, we've unproxied those two things. We've proxied the two that are important, and then we go to the next screen in Cloudflare, and Cloudflare gives you these two domain name, name servers that you need to copy and paste and drop them into GoDaddy. You drop them in here, and then on the next screen, it scares you to death. It basically says, you're about to break everything. It's all gonna, it's not that big a deal, right? Because again, we are copying we're not making DNS changes really, we're just making copying. We're copying the records from one registrar to the next. And then you hit continue, And then it looks like nothing actually happened because GoDaddy has not updated their website. If you refresh the page, then you'll see your name servers. It freaks me out every time. I'm like, I just hit save. What happened? You know, I don't see my records. Just refresh the page and you'll see Norm and Sophia there. Then you go back, basically you're done with GoDaddy at that point because everything that is DNS related is now pointing to Cloudflare. And you can tell Cloudflare, hey, check name servers now. And you go back, I go back over to what's your DNS.net, I change it to use name servers, and I see that, oh look, it's all propagated. And this, honestly, this stuff used to take days, like in the late 90s. I mean, you would fax your records to somebody, and then eventually in the next few days, that person would manually make the, like it was a nightmare 25 plus years ago. Now it's pretty instantaneous. And then you go back to Cloudflare, Cloudflare will say, great news, everything worked. And that is migrating a domain from GoDaddy to Cloudflare. And it takes me like 10 minutes or so, depending. So just a reminder, make sure you are only proxying the stuff that you need proxying. And honestly, like if you're ever doing this and you're like, I knew this guy once that did a talk, like hunt me down. I can look at your records and tell you if like, yes, it's gonna work. So, all right, when you start off with Cloudflare, really the number one reason why I use Cloudflare is because I can push this button that says under attack mode. Your site will eventually get, I mean, it might be next week, it might be 10 years from now, but eventually you're gonna get hit with a denial of service attack. It happens. Clients always ask like, what did we do? You know, I'm like, nothing. They're just trying to see what's insecure and what we can attack. And Cloudflare allows you to push this button and it says, hey, under attack mode will temporarily pause all this stuff. You hit enable and then boom, it's on, and you have this little notifier here to turn it off, flip the switch, turn it off, and then you're done. One of the things that is, I guess, the most important thing once you have made the transition, moving the domain from Cloudflare to GoDaddy, is setting up your SSL certificate properly within Cloudflare. I always use Let's Encrypt as my SSL generator. I don't use Cloudflare's name SSLs, but I have to configure it to work properly. So when you click on the left, you click on SSL/TLS and go to the overview and hit the configure button. By default, it goes to the flexible mode, which is right here. Most hosting companies that I deal with now, they want it to be on full strict. If it's on flexible and that's not the way it's supposed to be set up, you're gonna get a screen that looks like this, which every web developer is familiar with this, too many redirects. So you change it over to full strict and boom, the website will pull up. One thing that's really cool, I just picked Bluehost out of the blue. Good one, Dad. All of the hosting companies tell you basically when on Cloudflare, how to configure. So do just a little bit of research with your hosting company before and find out when moving to Cloudflare, how does it need to be configured. But again, most of them use full strict and you're up and running pretty quickly. This is one of the things that I think is really cool with Cloudflare. How many of you guys have gone to a website and they're selling some product and you're like, oh, this looks like a great product, and it says to contact me, contact bob@gmail.com, right? You just like, I I, get this like, is it a real company? I mean, I get it, not everybody's tech savvy, but Cloudflare can basically emulate a real email address, and it costs absolutely nothing. So if you go over here, let's say you have a side hustle where you sell puppies or whatever, but you don't want to pay that $7 a month or however much it is for the email account, you can go over here, go to email routing, and then hit get started. You tell it, what email address, so Aaron at Messages from Beyond, and where does it need to go to Aaron's Gmail account here, and I hit create and continue, and it's gonna say, I already had this set up, so it normally will send an email to you to make sure that you want to receive email there. I'm already verified because I use that for one of my little side hustles. But you'll have to do a verification. It'll take 5 seconds. But you hit continue, and then once that's done, it's going to say, hey, you've got to make 3 MX records and 3 TXT records, which is normally a pain, but you're already on Cloudflare, so they have API integrations where you literally just push the button and they do all those records for you. And again, what's your DNS.net? That's cool. That is not.
There we go.
There you go.
Whew. Okay, I was gonna show you. I'm not crazy. Maybe I am. But it just showing that it does it real quickly. Super simple to set that up, and now I've got one custom address set up. So you can also probably configure it where it sends email out that way. At that point, I would probably just go ahead and pay for the Google Apps account or whatever you want to use. But I just think that's a pretty cool feature that came out a couple of years ago, where I was like, I got, honestly, my mom was paying for a Google Apps account for something that she doesn't really, and I was like, you don't need to pay that $7. So I implemented that for her, and it works great. So DMARC. This used to scare me when a client would come to me and say, can you help me, because there's with DNS, there's SPF and DKM records in DMARC, and DMARC always scared me because it seems like every time I would look up how to do it, it seemed like it changed. It's a lot easier now in Cloudflare where you pretty much push a button. So DMARC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Confirmation. I'm so glad it's called DMARC. But to enable that in Cloudflare, you just go to DMARC Management and click Enable It, and it's again gonna say, hey, this is what you have, this is what it needs to be, and you push the next button and your DMARC is set up. To me, I would spend too much time like, how do I do this properly? Cloudflare makes it really easy. All right, DNS in Cloudflare. This is like the boring part. This is what every registrar has that has DNS. There's not a lot of bells and whistles within here. The only feature that you get in here that's really cool is you can make, where's the little icon? I'm not seeing it, but I'm gonna go back here, hold on. Oh, when you hit edit and you can put a description in here, which if you have a pretty complex domain name setup, it's nice to have some notes in there so you can say, hey, I changed this IP address, or you can say, I just changed this at this date and here's the old one, in case you need to go back. And then now you have a little message icon here so you can have some notes in there. That's like the only bell and whistle, or is it just a bell, with the DNS records. But GoDaddy doesn't have that. It's nice to have some notes in there. Like I had said before, GoDaddy also puts a lot of things in here that you don't really need. Like I'm never gonna use this GD GoDaddy thing, and so I just tend to remove things that aren't needed. These are domaincontrol.com. Now that I'm not on GoDaddy, I don't need these anymore. So I always just remove them and try to get the DNS to look as clean and fresh as possible. Obviously, I'm blocking that IP address in there from you guys, since you guys are a bunch of hackers. But DNS is pretty simple when it comes to Cloudflare. This is one of the best features that Cloudflare has, in my humble opinion. How many of you guys deal with websites that get contact form submissions? Yeah, super common. There's always spam, and the first thing when a client comes and contacts me and says, hey, I'm getting a lot of spam, I go and look and say, did I move them over to Cloudflare? I try to get everyone on there, but it's nearly impossible to get 100% people to move those things, because you're always waiting on that one guy that has the password to GoDaddy to make the changes, and it's like fine, I'll go live without it being on Cloudflare, which always bites me later. But when a client says, I'm getting a lot of spam, this is the first thing I do. I go over here to security and click on bots, and I turn these on. So bot fight mode, I'll explain both of these. This is relatively new, that one's super new, but this one is basically, Cloudflare keeps track of what people are doing on websites, and if an IP address is filling out a bazillion contact forms, chances are they're going to start being blocked. So if I have this on for my domain, it will start blocking that stuff. This is new fancy AI stuff, and this is basically the question is, do you want your website to be used for AI research? Because when you go to Google now, a lot of people don't even go to the actual website, they just get the AI result. And so you can turn off the ability for Google to use AI as your resource. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It really depends on your use case. Do you want people just to not go to your website? I don't know, that's too new to me. This is the important part, is that you're blocking the bots there. And this one is kind of funny too. It traps the crawlers, where it just burns a lot of their resources, which is kind of funny. I haven't turned that on yet, but Cloudflare is constantly adding new features too, which is nice. All right, fancy stuff in Cloudflare, and I could probably talk for 4 hours about all the features. There's so many things, but this is one of the things that I will often do for clients when they start getting a lot of unwanted traffic. For example, this domain I bought, and then an hour later, I had 223 hits from France. I'm like it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't really matter to me either. But for this use case here, I looked into it and I realized, okay, it's from France, and they're hitting my WordPress JSON. Why would, that's clearly not a person. So I was like, okay, I'll set a little rule for this example to block them. So I can go over here to the WAF, or the Web Application Firewall, where I can create for free up to 5 rules. These rules are cool. You give it a label. I made it do a JS challenge, the French, and you can do, if the country equals France, then put a JS challenge in front. When you do that, you have your rule right here, and then I turned my VPN on, made it look like I'm coming from France, so you can see what a JS challenge looks like. And it just puts, for like 2 or 3 seconds or so, it tests to see if you're a bot or not, and then it'll let you through if you're not a bot. Nice little feature when you're getting hammered from, this was 223 hits is not a ton, but when you're getting hit by thousands and thousands at once, those rules come in super handy. And then once it realizes you're a human, not a bot, it takes you to the website. Isn't that gorgeous? That's what the site still looks like today. Because it's just a plugin in the background right now. But you can get a little fancier too. You can block it. This is so weird. I don't have anything fancy going on here. Like that's wild. Okay, so you can just change it to block it instead of doing a JS challenge if you realize that all of them for that country are bad. I once was getting hammered from this thing called Pedalbot. It happened. 3 domains at once were all getting different IP addresses. I have no idea what Pedalbot is. I still don't know what it is, but I have that rule on a lot of my sites because for some reason it was getting hammered. So I set a rule that says if the country equals Singapore and the user agent, so every browser has a user agent string, you know, it normally says like Mozilla and then the version number and all this crap that you don't understand. But I just put in there, if the country equals Singapore and the user agent contains Pedalbot, then block it. And it was awesome having that rule because I throw most of my servers on DigitalOcean, have about 35 servers on DigitalOcean. And it's just a great feeling when you see the CPU's at 100%, you set that rule and then it just immediately starts decreasing. It's really nice. And if you're not using Cloudflare, how do you stop an attack like that? That's kind of like my number one question is like, I don't know of any other service out there that does what Cloudflare does, and it's free. So to me, it's a no-brainer. This is kind of cool. I do a lot of WordPress stuff, and this is a great rule here. We do a lot of marketing sites where we don't need, people don't need to log in to the back end to make comments or whatever. They're just marketing sites. So most of the time, the sites we build, they have an administrator log in. So I'll set a rule like this. Secure WP login. If the country does not equal United States, in the URI path, meaning if they're trying to access wp-login.php, that's the page, if you're trying to log in, that's going to be the page that gets loaded, then block it. And that is super handy. We have some clients, they're like, we don't have any international clients at all. There's no reason someone outside the country would ever need to access the site, and they've asked me to just block it, which is rare. I wouldn't say, you know, to do that, but having this type of capabilities is really nice. So once you have that one of these rules set up, you can see it only had 7 in here, but you'll see it, you know, it'll show you if it's going up and down and stuff like that, and you can click on that 7 right there. It'll show you those rules, and then you can get more specifics on it right there. You can tell right there, it's trying to hit, like, why in the world would it try to hit these random things? You know, comes in handy a lot. And then I think that's it. Yes, that's my talk.
Fast.
So